My name is Ismael Criado. I'm from Spain, and I'm the chair of the working group of the e-health, new technologies and e-health of the EFIM, the European Federation of Internal Medicine. And I'm pleased to present this webinar in which we are going to talk about the fundamentals of AI applied to the internal medicine. We are all talking about this thing now. Every day we have news on AI, and we need to know how to implement it in our current work. I don't know if you are used to it, but I hope that with this webinar, you could change the way you live the medicine thanks to the new technologies. And that's why we have Marco with us that will be introduced by Mario.
Thank you, Ismael. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I want to say thanks to Young Internists Group for giving me the opportunity to moderate with Ismael this interesting and highly topical discussion on AI in internal medicine and in medicine in general. Before introducing today's speaker, I would like to suggest the audience to submit any question in the comment section, so at the end we could read it, or even if they prefer, at the end they can freely talk and freely speak at the end of the presentation. So it is a pleasure for me to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Marco Montagna, one of the representatives of the Young Internists of the Italian Society of Internal Medicine, who is currently conducting a PhD on AI in medicine at San Raffaele University of Milan, and is a member of the Italian European Working Group on Artificial Intelligence. So thank you, Marco. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Mario. And thanks for having me, really. So I'm starting to share my desktop, and you tell me if the presentation is working. Do you see?
Yes, we see it.
Okay. So yeah, really, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure for me to have this opportunity to share my thoughts and experiences that I've been developing during the past years. As was mentioned, I am working on artificial intelligence in medicine, and I really am trying to figure out what is my place as a physician in this kind of new wave of technology and a new wave of proposals that are arriving to us as physicians. So I think really I want to start from us, from the who. So why and who are we talking about? We are talking about physicians. First of all, why physicians? Because it's us that are the target and the first users of these new technologies. So it's us really that must take the stage and really start be interested into this topic and start really understand what we can do with that and what we are expected to do as physicians in this new era of medicine, I would say. And it's really on us because we are the advocates of our patients. So it's us that know what is really the need of our patients, of us as users, and of healthcare in general. So why are we talking about it? Because, I think you agree with me that the healthcare now is facing great challenges. So aging, multimorbidity, shortages of healthcare workforce, and then increased cost of treatment. So we all know that medicine and healthcare in general are facing great challenges. And what is being said is that basically artificial intelligence will help us in tackling these challenges, and I want really to understand if that's true. So this is what our duty. Let's really ask ourselves, is artificial intelligence going to really help us in overcoming these challenges? We really are not sure about that. So there's people who are saying that this is for sure true. So actually we don't have a choice. Artificial intelligence is coming, will come, and will try to somehow replace us. I think that this is not the case. We are really needing to have physicians into the loop and really act as advocates. So what are we talking about? Then the next question is, what is this artificial intelligence? Is it really one thing or multiple things? What can it really do? What can we do with it? And what should we learn? So are we physicians expected to become engineers? Are we going to become coders? Should we start learning how to code Python, to code machine learning? I want really to tackle that immediately. We are not expected to learn how to code. So please forget about learning how to code. We need to have our own experience, our own expertise, which is being physicians. Some of us may learn a bit of coding. I am learning a bit of coding, but that's because I am interested in that. I'm doing research on that. But overall, as physicians, you are not expected to learn to code for the moment. Actually, there are things that can code for you. If you really want to create machine learning, you can really have other things code for you. And then when should we start talking about these things? I think we are too late. So we should have started talking about these things some years ago. And I'm very happy that European Federation of Internal Medicine, the Italian Society of Internal Medicine, we are all really starting to work on this and think deeply what is our role. So when is now, when is actually in the past, because as you know, overall in the whole world, there is lots and lots of talks going on around artificial intelligence, not only in medicine. And where should we talk about this? This is the first place where we can talk about it. So our societies, scientific societies, so these webinars, this is the first instance. So I'm happy we're here discussing about this topic. But then we should discuss this also in our hospitals with our colleagues and in our academias. So universities are starting to change the curricula of young students in medicine, and they are starting to implement this teaching into the curricula. This means, of course, taking something out, because medicine is already quite crowded in the needs of teaching. So we had to take some out. So I will briefly introduce what AI is, because I think it is important that we know what we are talking about. We are on the same page. Then we will see some application, but really not examples of what AI can do, but really what is our practice. So how to implement it into our practice and why it is so difficult. So there are lots of critical issues into artificial intelligence and its application to medicine. Then, of course, I cannot not talk about large language models. So GPTs, ChatGPT, but all large language models, because that's part of our job. So I will give you a short guide on how to approach that. And then I want to leave a lot of time really for your questions and your thoughts, because this is this is my point of view, but I want to really hear your point of view. So it's interesting because the real definition of artificial intelligence has a lot of humans inside. So it is defined as machines that mimic cognitive functions that humans associate with the human mind, such as learning and problem solving. So there are many different definitions online. This is the one I prefer because really it has the humans in the loop. So it is us that should really define what is intelligence, and it is not easy actually to define the intelligence itself. It becomes quite a philosophical question, and what you see is that really something which is stressing the concept of learning and problem solving. So it's not just automatizing stuff, it is learning from evidence and solve problems. So changing the behavior of the machine as the context changes. And this is a discussion that has been around since many years. So it's around the 50s that artificial intelligence was defined, and Alan Turing began suggesting this kind of innovation. So he was saying this into the Imitation Game, a famous paper by him in 1950. Can machines think? So they were already asking themselves such things at that time. This should begin with a definition of the meaning of the term machine and think. So he was saying this is very difficult because you should define what think means. So let's try to replace this question. Let's try to use a game, and so introduce the imitation game concept. So basically, he said if you are the person C and you are interacting with two agents, agent A and agent B, and you are really not able to understand and distinguish between who is the machine and who is the human, then you are basically interacting with some thinking machine, because the machine is basically behaving as a human. So this is very interesting because if you think about it now, GPTs, large language models, are actually indistinguishable from humans. So we may have reached some kind of machine thinking in a way, which is very interesting, but that's not this is not meaning that the machine has some ethical view, some moral, some inbuilt laws. It means that the machine is able to think. Then it's us that must control that thinking and use it for the good. Okay, and really the history of artificial intelligence is really long history. So as you see, it began in 1950s. Then there were periods of great expectations when new technologies were discovered, like the artificial neural network, which has been around since quite a long time. And then periods of the so-called AI winters, where really funding was lacking and research was stopping. And now we are, of course, in a period of great expectation, of great growth. I would say this is the best time that artificial intelligence as a research field has ever witnessed, especially given thanks to the introduction of the GPTs and similar models. And why is this happening now? It is happening now for a series of reasons. First reason is that we have now the computing power. So this is the computing power that that these models require in order to be trained. So as you see from the deep learning area, the amount of calculations we are able to do has increased very, very quickly. And now we are really reaching very strong computing power that allows us to really analyze that data, the lot of data that we have. As a physicians already here, you start to have some critics because, okay, we are good in creating huge models, very good quality models, but then how much do they cost, and how much CO2 do you produce, how much pollution do you produce in order to have those models? And we as physicians must be interested in that stuff because we know that the healthcare has costs, and we already have the problem of reducing costs in healthcare. So if we have more costly models, who's going to pay for them? And we already know that the pollution and global warming is really the climate change is really causing deaths and mortality and morbidity all over the world. So we should, as physicians, already from the beginning, really start to think carefully on what is being proposed to us. Okay, so I'm really starting to be critical already from the beginning. And then the second thing that is helping this huge AI growth is the fact that we have lots of data. So healthcare data is growing at great pace. It is actually one of the the sectors which is having a compound annual growth rate of data production, which is the strongest, so 36% growth rate. But we must think carefully again what is inside this huge growth of data. So what is this data that we are producing? Is it high? Is it of good quality? Is it only imaging? Is it only for radiologists? Can we, as internists, actually produce good data that can be used to train models, etc.? So indeed, we have more data overall in the world, but we must see if that data is fit to be used into models. And so still in the introduction, I want just to show you that artificial intelligence indeed is not one thing. It is there are different artificial intelligences, different levels of artificial intelligence. You can have narrow artificial intelligences that are basically solving very specific problems like computer vision, sound recognition, so very precise tasks like recognizing a pneumonia on a chest X-ray, for example, like so to speak about radiology. And this is very simple in a way to be trained. This is the very simple machine learning. Then you have artificial general intelligence, so models that are actually trained on very large amounts of data that are actually able to complete general tasks, and then they can be used to complete then more specific tasks. So you basically have a very general model like ChatGPT, which is a general, very generalized language model that then can be fine-tuned and applied to specific tasks. And this is what I was mentioning, the machine thinking. So some more potent algorithm. And then in the future, we may also have machine consciousness. So as it is now, the models don't know they exist. They have basically no consciousness. So this is just for to see what's going to happen in the future. And then another piece of information that I think it is really important that I give you to start with is some kind of vocabulary. So when we are thinking of artificial intelligence, as I said, we are thinking of a container. Into artificial intelligence, we have machine learning, which is the way we create those artificial intelligences. So it is the way we train machines. And then deep learning is actually a specific kind of machine learning that is enabled by the availability of large data sets. So that's why we now can do deep learning. We can do deep learning because we have the computational power and we have the data sets, okay? But what I also want to say is that artificial intelligence is not something really new. It is basically part of data science. So there is a continuum from traditional statistics that most of you are already able to do, for sure better than me, and artificial intelligence. So there's a continuum. You take things that were already known from data science, from data analytics, from traditional statistics, and you translate them into the machine learning world. So sometimes and somehow languages, definitions, metrics, and the skills that are required are the same, okay, from statistics to artificial intelligence. And now I want to show you a very little example of artificial intelligence and machine learning. So how do we build an intelligent machine, a machine learning algorithm? We start from a data set, which is basically a collection of examples, so patients with their features and labels, of course. So this is the label, and these are all the features. The features are basically the informations that the model will use to predict the labels. So they're also called covariates or variables. And they can be lab tests, clinical data, data from radiomics, any kind of data you can think that is coming from your patients. And then you have the labels. So labels would be basically what the model needs to predict, okay? So in this case, this model is aimed at predicting if the patient is going to have an HbA1c decrease at 3 years, okay? And to do that, it will use these features, okay? This is a classical example of supervised machine learning because I give to the model the ground truth. So what is the real label for each patient, okay? And so the model must learn to use these labels, these features to predict the label. There are some times instead in which I basically don't give the labels, and that would be unsupervised machine learning. So what the model is doing is basically trying to use those features to create subgroups of patients by similarity. So it may take similar patients and put them into a group and other patients into another group, and that would be creating basically clusters of patients that share common features, and then I can study them and see what do they have in common, what is special about them, okay? So what the supervised machine learning would do is that basically I ask the model to learn from this condition, so learn to take these features and translate them into labels. And then I take out the labels, I give new features, and I ask the model to predict them. So the model will predict new labels on the basis of the features of each patient, and then I can compare the predicted features, the predictive labels with the actual labels, and do the famous confusion matrix to understand the quality of the algorithm, the capacity of the algorithm to give these predictions, okay? So, of course, metrics are many different ones, okay? So you have specificity, sensitivity, ROC-AUC, C-index. There are many different statistics that you can use to compare models, to understand their quality. And again, it is important that physicians stay into this loop and decide which are the metrics that should be optimized, decide which features should be included into the model, decide which is the ground truth. We will go through these things into the next slides, but I want really to show you that this is what is at the basis, and then we can think of what physicians can do on top of this. So this is supervised machine learning, okay? Just to show you a very simple example, but then this is really what is at the basis, and even ChatGPT somehow depends on this kind of reasoning. Okay. Then once you have the model, you should try to understand how it takes those decisions. So I gave the model different variables, but which were the ones that the model used to understand and predict the outcome? So are there some variables that are somehow more potent in the way they can predict the outcome? And so you can do this kind of nice SHAP, for example. This is a SHAP explanation graph, SHAP plot, in which basically the model is telling me ranking the features that it used to produce the final prediction. And it is also telling me which is the direction of those variables. So for example, the model is trying to predict the HbA1c change at 3 years time, and it is telling me that the starting glycated hemoglobin is very important to him. So it's the top feature that it is using to produce the final prediction. It is also telling me that high glycated hemoglobin at the beginning is going to predict to be on the positive side of the axis, so to have actually a decrease. So people starting with high glycated hemoglobin are more likely to have a decrease at 3 years in their glycated hemoglobin. And we can understand why, because we have patients that come with 14% of glycated hemoglobin. We are very worried about them. We started in them with lots of drugs, and they go from 14 to 10 in the first 1 to 2 years. Okay, so we can really go from the model to the explanation and then to our clinical practice to really understand why those things happen, what's behind that. So what is machine learning showing us? Basically, what I'm trying to tell you is that machine learning can be as simply from these kind of graphs can be a way to see more into our data, exactly like we do with an ultrasound machine, with a chest x-ray. So it is a new technology that allows us to really see deeper into our data, study better what we do, understand the processes that are behind our practice. Okay, why that? Because we have a lot of data, we have a new way to analyze that data. We can basically make evidence come out from that data, exactly like we do with traditional statistics. Okay, without any fancy application or without physicians being replaced. It is really from this point of view, it's really a technology that allows us to better see inside our data. Okay, we have to approach it like this, and it allows really to foster clinical discussion. Okay, we can use these evidences to discuss. Now let's go quickly into the application. So there are lots of jobs that can be done. AI can really work on different parts of our workflow. We can work more on consumer tasks and more clinical tasks, where we are, of course, focusing on our clinical tasks. And the ones I want to point your attention to are those ones. So clinical decision support and medical image analysis. So on the one hand, you have basically a new colleague on the side of you that is telling you what it thinks of that patient. It allows you to take a decision with another element into the whole variables you use to decide. You use CRP, you use imaging, you use vitals of the patient, you use your visit of the patient. You also use the input from artificial intelligence. And then medical image analysis is just a way to say that we can use artificial intelligence to allow us to better do diagnosis, to classify our patients, to help us in really improve our diagnostic rate and do classification, basically, very easy. But again, let's go on. So since there are lots of jobs that AI can do, and it can really work from the patient side to the clinical side to the clinician side, there is a lot of interest, and a lot of interest means lots of papers. So 12,000 papers in 30 years, 2,000 papers only last year, but consider that this is a mesh search, so it is really specific. And so I think there are many more papers. So there is lots of research going on, lots of interest, both financially and from academic point of view. But let's see what happens then. Then it happens that you must translate those research into FDA-approved device, so in software as medical devices. And as you can see, apart from last year, the approval of new devices every year was quite slow. So very few of those papers actually translating into clinical applications. So there is a bottleneck problem. This is a big problem that the AI world is facing into medicine. There is no capacity to translate research into real applications. And this is particularly true for internal medicine. So most of the applications, as you can see, is actually radiology. So there is plenty of talks going on about artificial intelligence into medicine, but if you look at FDA-approved software as medical devices, actually we are talking only about radiology and cardiology. So this is very interesting to me, I think. And as internists, we should start thinking, why are we missing here? Can't we use artificial intelligence into internal medicine? Where is the problem? The problem is that we have a bottleneck indeed. And the bottleneck comes from the fact that there are wrong needs set for artificial intelligence. The pipeline possibly is wrong, and the deployment is very difficult. But let's go into some steps. So needs, who's setting the needs for artificial intelligence? These people are setting the needs. So the needs for artificial intelligence, so what are the applications of artificial intelligence should be set basically by physicians, by nurses, by healthcare practitioners in general, and by patients. So we should find those needs and really act as advocates for our patients, make sure that whatever is produced by research and by academia and by industry is really helpful for them and for us. Okay, so what I'm asking you is to really get involved, be curious, and raise needs. So when you work, you say, okay, this thing is not working in my practice. I am missing this piece of information. Can artificial intelligence help me? And then we start interacting and we can create new things that are really useful. And I can tell you that these things will be produced and deployed very quickly because they start from physicians and from patients. Okay, and then the second thing is that the pipeline is really long. So most of us are actually only thinking of modeling. So we create machine learning models. So we model, we create new models. But the problem is that modeling is only a very tiny portion of the whole process. The whole process actually starts with us. It's us that producing the data, us and our patients. So we work with patients and we produce data. The data we produce is basically the base on which we build artificial intelligence. Is if that data is of poor quality, models will be of poor quality, their deployment will be totally a failure. Okay, so really focus on the production of data. What do you do every day to produce data? Is your data production of high quality? Then other people will take care of the extraction, pre-processing, modeling. You don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about the evaluation of models. So you should be able to understand if a model is really of good quality. So those metrics, sensitivity, specificity, ROC, IUC, those are the metrics that are really important for us. And not only those, but actually then, is it really useful for us? So it is high quality, but when I apply it to my patient population, is it going to work? So we want to see how it works in our population, see why it takes those decisions. So have an explanation because we want to trust the model, and then do a validation, a prospective external validation and some trials. What is happening now is that you have basically companies coming to your hospital and telling you, so they have this new model, want you to buy it, why don't you buy it and you deploy it into your hospital? And they don't tell you how they developed it, which was the starting population, which model it is, which variables are important for that model, etc., etc. This is the problem. So we as physicians must really start to be precise in how we do our everyday practice, be precise in the way we collect data, be critical, know statistic, know how to judge those models that are actually presented to us, and then work in teams because we are the physicians, but then there are data scientists, there are people creating those algorithms. So they don't know what we need, and we don't know how to develop those algorithms. So we must work together. So that's why I really am calling you to try to work into multidisciplinary teams. Find in your hospitals people doing data science. Go to university asking people to do data science. You have the data, they have the models, basically. We have to work together, okay? And then the deployment, again, becomes problematic because where do you see artificial intelligence along your daily life? Do you see, like before you see the patients, to maybe acquire some data from the patient, do summary of patient's note? Do you see it during your visit with the patient, maybe listening to you, creating notes for you, giving you suggestions on what you could ask, generate hypotheses together with you? Do you see maybe afterwards when you are thinking again on your patient, you give the data of your patient to the model is suggesting you possible diagnosis, possible things you should do, classify your patient, help you giving more data based on which you can take your decisions. So where do we see it? And it's not easy because if we know something from artificial intelligence, then our behavior will change. So are we going to be informed by what artificial intelligence is thinking, or we know it at the end? So, um, it's really a question of where you see during your workflow. Where do you see artificial intelligence during your workflow? And no one is going to know better than you because it's you that is working with artificial intelligence. So do you want it to, I don't know, do some work for you before you see the patient? I'm thinking again of radiologists. Maybe they want artificial intelligence to go through those hundreds of chest x-ray that come every day from the ER and just discard those as for sure negative so that they can focus on possibly positive causes. This could be an idea, but that's problematic because if then I don't know, the artificial intelligence may be missing something on the negative chest x-ray. So And we may argue that those chest X-rays were useless from the beginning, so we may actually discuss on why were they asked. So we are not maybe working on artificial intelligence, but we are working on our workflow and maybe assigning our tests to patients that are going to be positive from those tests. So really, we can discuss about our practice when we think on how to deploy artificial intelligence into our everyday life. It's really a chance for us to challenge the way we do medicine again. So try it. This is my suggestion. Start trying it. Search for some algorithms online that you can try to use. Use ChatGPT. Try to see where it helps. Try to be creative. Imagine where would you see it in your everyday life as a physician. And now I want to switch to the critical issues because, as you can maybe understand from what I'm saying, I think that artificial intelligence is not completely ready as it is now for healthcare in general. So all that glitters is not gold. So the first question is, do we have large enough data sets? Because we were saying that we have growing amounts of data every year in medicine, but is that data of large quality, of enough quality? Is it large enough? Because what's happening, for example, this is my example. So we start with 9,000, 7,000 patients, but once I apply my cohort selection criteria, so out of the whole patient population, I start to take out those patients that are interesting to me, I lose 80% of them. And this is, I think, what's happening most of the times. You have your question in mind, your use case for artificial intelligence application, you have your population in mind, but when you start digging into that population, you find that you have very few data of good quality in your hands. So what we could do is basically we could use data from different hospitals. We have few patients, you have few patients, the other hospital has few patients, and we take those patients all together and do analysis together. But there is a big problem now that, for example, I am now in UK and they treat diabetes differently than we do in Italy. So patients in UK are seen mostly by general practitioners, while in Italy we have diabetologists into the hospital. So the treatment setting for them is different. So how can I compare a machine learning model created in Milan with a machine learning created in Cambridge? Because those patients are different. The way the patients are treated is different. So this is, I think, again, a chance for us physicians to start asking ourselves, why are we lacking standards? Why are we treating patients all differently in Europe? Why cannot even compare our data sets? Because we collect variables differently. We have different unit of measurements. We call laboratory tests in different ways. So it is interesting really to start merging data sets throughout Europe, but we should be very careful in seeing that these are comparable. So standardized and start thinking of unified data collection efforts in Europe. We can, as European Federation of Internal Medicine, we could think of this. So starting collecting data from different hospitals in Europe. And then, is the data set populated enough? Does it contain mistakes? I want to just recall on how we used to do medicine. This is the way we used to do medicine up to some years ago. So how can you train models on this? So our way of doing medicine is really a chain of thoughts, is thinking, is some using words, not numbers. So physicians are used to think, not to calculate most of the time. So what data do we have? Then we switched from paper to computer, but then computer would be like this. So lots of different numbers, lots of different acronyms, and this is really difficult to be translated into machine learning models. This is not data that you can feed into usual normal machine learning models. So what they did, they gave us electronic health records. This is EPIC, very famous here in Cambridge. But then, do you think that a physician can help with such a software? Do you think it is useful? Do you think it is easy to be used, coding all that stuff, filling all that forms, trying to fit all the patient data in those little bit of tables and numbers? And so this is what they are requiring us to do. Basically, they're requiring us to increase the capacity we have to structure data, to give data in tabular format. This may be problematic for us. So we have, again, to think really carefully about it. And so whenever someone is telling us that we should change the way we work or that we should use new technologies, we should think, is it useful? Is it really what I need to improve my workflow and the way I help my patients? So advocate for useful tech. As you see, advocate is a word that I'm using quite frequently. And then the final issue is that about the labels. So this is what one funny thing. I was really looking for some image that was helping me delivering the message, but clearly what I'm thinking is that basically as physicians, we are never agreeing of anything. So often we are not really agreeing on a simple diagnosis as pneumonia. Are you 100% sure that the patient that you have in front of you has a pneumonia? If that is the case, is it bacterial or viral? How can you prove it is bacterial? How can you prove it is viral? So if you are training a machine learning model to diagnose pneumonia, you should be sure that the cases, the labels that you're putting, the patient has pneumonia, the patient has no pneumonia, are actually true. But we have very few ways to prove ground truth in medicine because medicine is probabilistic, is statistics by definition. So again, we must be very careful and we must be on the steering wheel when we are trying to apply machine learning to medicine, because medicine is science, but it is also art, you know. So and we most of the times are not agreeing one with each other about diagnosis, about treatments. So really think of it carefully, and again, so discuss on evidences, discuss on diagnosis, try to become more scientific when you work, trying to challenge the labels you are putting on your patients, because those labels that you put on your patients will then be used to train models. And if the labels are wrong, the models will be wrong and will not help you. But machine learn people, so engineers, they don't know this. They think that we are scientifical. They really think that our labels are 0, 1. So they don't understand the gray. We have to tell them that there is lots of gray in our profession, okay? And so, yeah, think about this. Because AI is capable of learning what to do only by examining existing evidence, okay? So last piece of information about large language models. So large language models basically are models that have the task to classify the next word. Okay, so they basically predict the next word into a sentence as they would predict a label. Very easy if you think about it. The problem is that they are trained on 50,000 classes, so each word is a label basically. So they are huge models that require huge neural networks to work, and they basically their output is a word with a probability. So which is the most probable word after the cat likes to sleep? In the ability bag zebra box to the model, box is the most probable word. So this is the basis, and you train it on massive amounts of data. You give sequences to which it can work, it can learn context, next word, and then you basically have a model that as a result becomes incredibly good at predicting the next word in any sentences. This is the basics of large language models. And so how would you approach such a model? This is what is suggested by UNESCO, by Alexander Tulkanov, who made this little graph, but I think this graph is really striking. So you have to decide if to use ChatGPT for your next task or not. Does it matter if the output is true? So are you using it to create a music, to create a new image, to create a poem? Okay, no problem. I don't matter if the output is true because I want really to be creative. So it's safe to use ChatGPT, but we usually, in our case, it matters if the output is true. So then it comes to the second question. Do you have to the expertise to verify that the output is accurate? If you don't, it is unsafe to use ChatGPT. So if you use ChatGPT to tell you something you don't know, you don't have the way to verify if it is true or not, you cannot use it. Instead, if you can verify if the output is accurate and you are able and willing to take full responsibility on its mistakes, because then it's you that are the user, it's you that is the user, then it is possible to use ChatGPT. Okay, so I think that is, for example, a very interesting tool when you have strange clinical cases in front of you and want to have more idea, because the model is just giving you idea. Have you considered this diagnosis? Have you considered this other diagnosis? Then you go on your papers, you go on your books, and you verify if that output is accurate. Okay, I tried it, for example, at the last Congress of Internal Medicine in Italy. So you know those lunch sessions when there are young internists or residents that are telling you very strange clinical cases they had. So I was in the back with my PC. I logged into ChatGPT and I was telling, you are a physician, you have to do a diagnosis of this strange clinical case. These are the variables you know. The patient has this and this and this. And the model would tell me a list of diagnoses. And actually, it was way quicker than the physician. So in a few passages, I was really managing to have very strange diseases that I really didn't know. But what I did then was to look for that disease, verify if that disease is actually existing, verifying if it is actually fitting with the clinical presentation, maybe doing more tests and then coming to a diagnosis. So I had help from like an external supervisor, from an external consultant, from my new colleague. So ChatGPT is just a new colleague that you can use to give you more ideas. But are you like taking for granted what your colleagues tell you? So when you are discussing with the colleagues during the clinical round, are you taking for granted that what they say is true? Not of course. We usually don't agree again. So we actually verify what people tell us, no? Even when we ask for a consultation, we then decide. It's not the infectivologist that decides for us, right? It's us that then decide which antibiotic to put based on what we got from the specialist. So large language models are very, very people with very large knowledge, of course, because they learn on anything, but it's us that then have to use it properly. Okay, so it's just another clinical decision support system. I guess most of you already use UpToDate, they use BMJ best practice. So ChatGPT and colleagues are just very similar to UpToDate and best practice. They are basically only telling you things into a chatbot view. But then you would anyway verify. So what's on UpToDate is the result of a discussion between clinical guidelines, local ways of doing things. So it's not, again, ground truth. You would anyway challenge what's written on UpToDate. You don't apply those things brainlessly, right? You think, is it really useful for me? Is it what I was looking for? Can I do this on my patient? So this is what I suggest you, on how I suggest you to use ChatGPT, okay? And of course, you have to teach your students to use it, yours or your residents. Tell them how to use these. We are trying in San Raffaele University, Vita-Salute San Raffaele University, to teach our students to use those clinical decision support systems, because it is really a question of being able to properly use it, to address questions through ChatGPT and through large language models into a proper way, telling to the model what it should do, using it properly, okay? And being aware of what it is telling me, being aware that it is just probability. It is predicting the next word, so it's not knowledgeable, let's say. So I think, yes, I've reached the conclusion. I want to stay on this slide for a bit, so if you want to scan the QR code, that's me, that's my contacts. If you want to reach me for any question, any discussion, any shared project that we can have. At the moment I'm in Cambridge, but then we'll go back to Italy in April, May. And I suggest you to read some books if you want. You can read Deep Medicine. This is very interesting to start again having some new thoughts on artificial intelligence. Then you can play with elements of AI. You can Google this. This is very interesting. It's really a game course that you can do. Then you can read this paper. This is on Nature Digital Medicine. It is a short guide for medical professionals in the era of artificial intelligence. And then this short position paper, no, this is actually a letter, yes, an opinion in New England Journal of Medicine, which is again telling you that we have to compare artificial intelligence to our medicine, to the way we do medicine, to our standards, to our gold truths, okay? And then instead, if you want to be more technical, if you are those of you who want to do research on this, who want to learn a bit of Python, learn a bit of modeling, you can do Microsoft Learn Paths. They are very interesting. The Cambridge Center for Artificial Intelligence in Medicine Summer School, it's very interesting. The Revolutionary Physician Sessions on YouTube, you can Google or go on YouTube and look for them. They're very, very interesting. And then on Coursera, you can find some courses on it. Yeah, I think I'm
Thank you,
done with the
Marco.
presentation.
Very, very interesting. Very interesting.
Sorry, I rushed a bit, but there was a lot of things to be said.
You stayed
Perfect.
in time perfect.
We have some questions. Maybe you can answer them. We have one from Roberto Cosentini. Could we apply AI in the differential diagnosis?
Yeah, so I don't know if Roberto, if you want to like interact with a microphone, but anyway, if you mean like asking AI to give us a list of differential diagnosis based on the presentation of our patient, of course you can. If you go on ChatGPT and you say, you have this kind of patient with this kind of lab test, this medical history, this presentation, I visited the physical examination, what do you think of it? And the ChatGPT will tell you exactly the differential diagnosis and why for each of it thinks it can be probable or less probable. So you can do that, of course, but then again, it's your responsibility. You are the physician. Like you use any test. It's just it's like having a colleague that is suggesting you things that you are maybe not thinking about in the first place. Yes, it is indeed. You can do that.
I don't know if Roberto is still here. There's one more question for...
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Marco.
You're welcome. So
Yes.
could I suggest questions to patients in order to improve our history taking? Yes. Yes, so there's people that is using artificial intelligence as a tool to basically do an initial history taking. So the patient is interacting with the chatbot and telling the problem, the disease, and the chatbot is asking all the same things we would ask, and then recording them into nice tables, nice paragraphs, and summarizing the medical history of your patient. And it can listen to you, of course, and suggest you if you are maybe forgetting to ask some question. It can do many, many different things. The problem is that at the moment, I would say that all of these things would be experimental. They would be proposed to you by some company that is producing a chatbot or a microphone that is listening to you and helping you with history taking, differential diagnosis, etc. I don't know if those things were ever tried by physicians. They were ever validated into the real clinical scenario, and if they can really help our everyday life. So if they can really spare money, for example, how much do they cost? Do they cost more than maybe hiring more physicians to do the same questions? This is a problem. How much does it cost to keep them in the years coming? So do I have to pay a fee every year to the person selling me that kind of application, etc.? So there are many different aspects to be considered when adopting technologies, but they can do that for sure. They can do that already. Yes, technology is there. The problem is how to apply.
Marco, I have something to say. Well, when we are talking about AI, we think on one thing sometimes, but we have to know, as you said before, that there are different kind of application of the AI. No? For example, voice recognition that you are talking about for doctors, but also for patients, it's a way of using a predictive AI that it's already in the market. I think in Spain we have some tools that you can use it with for the transcription of the clinical interview, but also there are some tools that can even make a telephone call to the patient and gather all the information, the clinical information from them. So now it's a reality that we have these kind of tools. The problem is that we have to buy them and we have to make the investment to put them in the workflow. But now we have them. And about the differential diagnosis, maybe it's not just about asking ChatGPT. It's look for other tools that are already there in the market that can give us the focus on medicine more or the evidence-based medicine. I don't know if you know, like open evidence also. We have already. It's not ChatGPT or Gemini. It's more specific. So it's nice that we try to look for these tools because by now, for me, every day I use these kind of tools because they are, I think, very, very important for my way of making decisions to do it in a evidence-based way. What do you think about that?
Well, I do appreciate what Marco said about this way of using something like ChatGPT or other tools. Just imagine that like a colleague to speak with. Just not trust what it says as is new evidence. You always have to verify. You can interact with, but you should verify everything that you learn from it. So that's a great point of view, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. Then Matteo is asking if AI can help our ability to create new connection and new links in our research activity, everyday life activities that we are not so good to see. Yes, so it is a way of analyzing reality. It is just a new analytical tool, so you can take out from data like unseen connection and things you didn't think of because you do those unsupervised rounds, and you also do those large machine learning experiments. You have hundreds of variables, and then you may be throwing in variables that you are not thinking of, and it is actually appearing that they are important. And you can also use it to get new ideas, so you can discuss with the ChatGPT and colleagues. So any a large language model and have it tell you new research ideas, new venues. For example, you can use large language models to do reviews for you, to extract knowledge from papers. So reading papers, instead of you can create 10 like 10 key points for each paper that you should learn, etc. It is really, really interesting.
I don't know if is there any other intervention for the audience? Someone just feel free to say anything. Nobody's talking. At the end, I have a little consideration and a little question for Marco. Well, unlike the past when technology were somehow metabolized slowly by clinicians, we are now witnessing a rapid explosion of new tools, new devices. Do you think that is there any risk for us, for doctor, to reduce our critical and diagnostic capabilities? Are we able to run after these novelties or not yet? What do you think about it?
Very interesting question, and this is the core topics. So in the past, we like physicians always witnessed new technologies coming into practice, okay, and these technologies actually helped us in doing a step further. So think of the first chest X-rays, think then of the CT scans, the MRI scans, and now you have ultrasound. You go on the bedside ultrasound, and you can really improve the capacity you have to visit your patient. So those were, as you said, slowly adapting to our practice. There were less people producing those things and proposing those things to hospitals, and it was easier to really understand if they were useful, okay, because they were producing something you could see, basically. And the same for drugs. So we see drugs coming to the market every day, new drugs, but they require years and years of research. You screen thousands of molecules and you come out with 5 molecules that can be produced, and you have very strict procedures by FDA in order to have those applied to patients. For artificial intelligence, I don't know why, but we are basically not witnessing such rigor and such attention. So there is some leak from the market to the hospitals without proper and rigid controls, without attention. And this time also, our patients are the target of those applications. So sometimes our patients come to us using already artificial intelligence. So who is going to teach them? Who is going to defend them from people that just want to make money from artificial intelligence? The financial interest in this period, in this time on healthcare is much bigger. Why that? Because overall, in all countries in the world, healthcare is suffering. So companies, industry is seeing that we are suffering. They see that we are in a moment of weakness. And so we are fragile. And they are really trying to push us not to be replaced, but to really accept passively these technologies. So that's why we must go back to our own real foundation. I call this the unexpected foundation of artificial intelligence. Why that? Because we are scientists. We must go back to science, to do science on our patients and on our workflow, and really tackle these things from a statistical point of view, from a rigorous like benefit and risks point of view. So it's us that really must drive the change. I'm not saying that as physicians we should keep on doing what we do and keep on working as we do and not accepting those technologies. I think we actually should open our hospitals to more technology and to more people coming to tell us about technology. We should be open to collaborations, be open to multidisciplinary work, really try to interact with more people from the industry, but with the point of view that it's us that are the advocates. Okay, it's us that we can learn a bit of those things that we need in order to better basically interact with those people to filter what is being proposed to us and to our patients, because it's us that really know the good of our patients. Of course, the pace is very quick, but it is also true that we can use artificial intelligence to stay at pace. So, for example, I don't know how to code. I had no time to study coding like an engineer, but I have Copilot. So I now code because artificial intelligence is coding for me. So I can somehow be quicker into adopting a new technology because the technology is helping me too. So we can really, we should understand which technologies are making our job easier, which technologies were designed for us, which technologies are cost effective. And of course, compared to the past, now there are new people around the hospital. So you know that now people is studying they are doing masters in business schools for medicine, business school for hospital administration. Of course, you cannot have a physician administer the whole hospital and take decision on models that cost thousands and thousands so millions of euros sometimes. You need people that come from the economical financial world to help us in taking decisions, of course. So there are new expertise, new people, new works, new jobs also helping us coming from other places. Of course, the hospital is evolving. It's no longer just a places where healing is happening, but it is really an industry itself. So it requires good managers again. So we should also tell to our managers what are our needs. What happens now is that managers are buying things instead of us. Okay, but we need to tell our managers, I need this, this is crap, this is not useful, this was not validated on my population, etc., etc. This language is something we can learn as physicians. It is part of our language. We do that with drugs. When a person from a drug company comes and tells us about the new medication, they show us the Kaplan-Meier, they show us the comparison of activity with the previous molecule or with the competitor molecule, so we can read those graphs and we can understand if the representative of that company is actually trying just to fool us. Okay, it's actually the same.
So Marco, it was very interesting that you focus on the data quality that we produce as physicians, because it's true that there's no technology if there's no data. But the problem is that we use knowledge by now to make medicine. We don't transform the knowledge we have in our brain into data, and we try to put as few data as possible in order to fulfill the record that we have to do. But it's not the real thinking that we are doing. No? Our reasoning, it's made by a lot of information that it's not written in the paper. So by now, we need to change the way of traducing what we are thinking into data. And that's why maybe one of the problems on the deployment that you were telling, that radiology is it's very easy to take data from them because it's an image, and the machine can take the data from the image, but the machine cannot take the data from our brains. And the clinical reasoning, it's still in our brains. So what do you think it would be our work in the next 10 years from this point of view, from the point of view of externalizing the knowledge that we have in our brains and the clinical reasoning we are doing every second during our work?
Yeah, it is definitely not easy to translate clinical reasoning into data, into some kind of thing that can be taught to a machine. I think we have to act on one side. We have to try to go back to some kind of, as I was trying to mention, scientific way of doing medicine. So trying to really transform into words the decision we take. So given this and this and this, having said and read this kind of evidence, I decide that. Okay, so trying to really describe, and also this is something we are losing. We are not doing anymore to our patients. We are not explaining to our patients why we decide this or that treatment, and this is a problem. We stopped explaining to our people why we reason in a certain way, why we think this diagnostic test is useful for them. This is, I think, again, artificial intelligence is helping us to so to go back to the real meaning and origin of our workflow. So trying to explain to patients, try to write down stuff. I know it's a question of time. We don't have time to write everything down, but we can go back to do evidence-based medicine also in the way we make reports, also in the way we take decisions. So taking decisions based on evidence, highlighting that this parameter, this laboratory test, and this blood, I don't know, isolation, this cultural test allowed me to decide to do this. So trying to transform a bit, and of course large language models are becoming very interesting because they can digest our reports, they can digest our words, and they can understand the way we think a bit through our reports. But of course, it is required that we write something, that we try to be worthy, to make our thinking explicit. And I think this is important, really, to be taught to students. So also because the person that comes after you in the round or that reads your letter should understand why you took some decisions, should challenge your decisions based on your reasoning. So if they see what's your reasoning, they can really challenge what you did or understand better why you did something and agree with you. So it is a chance really to think back to how we take notes, how we structure our own data, how much we lose, how much information we lose every day because we are in a hurry. So instead of being more in a hurry, trying to do more, I suggest we try to do less and better, and maybe have technology do and replace us on certain things. We lose a lot of time in our workflow. We do that because we are not well organized. So I think that it is not AI that will replace us, but it is actually engineers that will replace us. It is actually workflow engineers that will replace us because they will see that we are losing a lot of time, losing lots of money because we do things without really thinking of it, without focusing on it. So it's from one side, it is really a question of revolutionizing the way we do medicine, basically. Think also on telemedicine, no? We could do lots of things on telemedicine, and this would save time for us, time for our patients. Adopting telemedicine would really reduce costs overall, and it will increase the data we produce because telemedicine then would be all digitalized. We would need to think and write and explain things through telemedicine. But the adoption of telemedicine is very slow because it requires really a change of mindset from our physicians, our colleagues, and we are not good change makers. We are quite slow in changing the way we do things. So that's why I'm calling for these. It's interesting that we had this webinar, we had this opportunity to discuss and share ideas, because from here we can start also as a working group and try to spread, let's say, the knowledge that it is not just a question of the technology, but it is also a question of us physicians working in a different way to foster better technology for our patients.
Interesting. We have Alice that have a
Yes.
comment. AI step by step enlarge the data observations and quality of data. semiology revival, re-engagement of doctors in participating in the healthcare process, force alignment of doctors with patient needs. We need to improve the evaluation of our own performance while saving us. It's time for doctors to participate in innovation
Yes.
instead of undergoing it. So
That's a perfect summary. Thanks, Elise.
yes, it's a perfect summary. So I think I don't know if Mario want to add something, but I think Marco have done a very nice talk about an introduction of the.
I'm glad you enjoyed.
Yes, I enjoyed it a lot. And
Well,
thank you very much, Marco, and thank you, Mario. Maybe you can
you.
close the webinar.
So I'm thanking Ismael for being here. Congratulations again, Marco, for your stimulating and comprehensive report about the
Thanks.
implication of artificial intelligence in medicine. The topic is of current interest, so I opened the way for several points of discussion. So keep going in this way. I want to thank at the end every participant of this session. So I think that we can close it. Thanks again, Marco. Thanks, Ismael.
Thank everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you for having me.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Have a good evening.
Bye bye. See you.
Bye bye. Thanks.